Question 1. What is the primary goal of the e-discovery process in litigation involving electronic records? A. To avoid production of potentially damaging evidence. B. To collect all data stored on all devices, regardless of relevance. C. To identify, preserve, and produce relevant electronically stored information, ESI, for legal use. D. To create new documentation to support client claims. Correct answer. C. To identify, preserve, and produce relevant electronically stored information, ESI, for legal use. Explanation. The Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, FRCP, especially Rule 26 and Rule 34, mandate that parties preserve and produce electronically stored information, ESI, relevant to litigation. The e-discovery process is structured to ensure that evidence such as emails, documents, and databases are collected and maintained without alteration. The goal is not to withhold or fabricate, but to follow legal duties of disclosure and compliance under rules governing discovery. Question 2. Which of the following best explains the principle of proportionality in e-discovery? A. It limits discovery to ESI that is proportional to the needs of the case, considering cost, burden, and relevance. B. It requires equal number of files be produced by both parties. C. It mandates that every device owned by each party be searched and reviewed. D. It allows unlimited discovery as long as one party can pay for it. Correct answer. A. It limits discovery to ESI that is proportional to the needs of the case, considering cost, burden, and relevance. Explanation. Rule 26(b)(1) of the FRCP emphasizes the proportionality standard. This balances the need for discovery with considerations such as the importance of the issues, the amount in controversy, and the burden versus benefit of producing the data. This prevents excessive discovery requests and ensures fairness. Question 3. Ms. Alvarado is a paralegal assisting a law firm involved in a commercial dispute. The opposing party has sent a request for production of ESI, including emails from the CEO's personal tablet. The CEO objects, stating the device is personal property and not used for work. However, internal chat logs show the CEO sent business-related directives via that tablet. What should Ms. Alvarado do next? A. Immediately delete the messages to protect client privacy. B. Recommend issuing a legal hold to preserve all business-related ESI from the CEO's tablet. C. Request the CEO deny access and cite privacy laws. D. Ignore the request since the tablet is personal property. Correct answer. B. Recommend issuing a legal hold to preserve all business-related ESI from the CEO's tablet. Explanation. Under FRCP Rule 37(e) and the Sedona Principles, ESI relevant to litigation must be preserved even if located on personal devices, especially if used for business. Ms. Alvarado should ensure a legal hold is in place to avoid spoliation and potential sanctions. Courts have increasingly ruled that BYOD, bring your own device data, is discoverable if it pertains to the dispute. Question 4. What is the main difference between primary and secondary sources in legal research? A. Primary sources are used only in trial courts. B. Secondary sources are binding authority in all jurisdictions. C. Secondary sources are written only by judges. D. Primary sources are actual laws and court decisions. Secondary sources explain or analyze the law. Correct answer. D. Primary sources are actual laws and court decisions. Secondary sources explain or analyze the law. Explanation. Primary sources include constitutions, statutes, case law, and administrative regulations, the actual law. Secondary sources such as legal encyclopedias, treatises, and law reviews help explain or critique the law but are not legally binding. Knowing the difference is foundational in research and citation. Question 5. When is it appropriate to use citators like Shepard's or key cite during legal research? A. To write a legal memo without reading the actual case. B. To summarize statutes into plain English. C. To determine whether a case is still good law or has been overruled. D. To conduct personal background checks on litigants. Correct answer. C. To determine whether a case is still good law or has been overruled. Explanation. Citators allow legal researchers to trace the history and treatment of a case. Shepardizing Lexis or using key cite Westlaw ensures that a case has not been overturned, reversed, or criticized by subsequent rulings. Failing to verify a case's validity can lead to citing bad law, which is a serious error in legal practice. Question 6. Which of the following best demonstrates efficient use of Boolean connectors in legal databases? A. Typing full sentences as you would in Google. B. Using and, or, and not to narrow or broaden search results strategically. C. Skipping connectors because databases ignore them. D. Only using keywords without any connectors. Correct answer. B. Using and, or, and not to narrow or broaden search results strategically. Explanation. Boolean logic allows precise and efficient searching in legal databases. For example, using employment and discrimination will return results containing both terms. Understanding Boolean operators helps researchers save time and find the most relevant law, essential for paralegal work. Question 7. Mr. Brown, a litigation paralegal, has just received a motion hearing date from the court. However, he notices that it conflicts with a key deposition date already on the firm's calendar. He is responsible for scheduling but is overwhelmed and missed the conflict initially. What is the best step Mr. Brown should take? A. Notify the attorney immediately and propose rescheduling one of the dates. B. Ignore the conflict and hope the deposition is postponed. C. Wait until the day before to inform the attorney, hoping it resolves itself. D. Call the opposing counsel directly to cancel the hearing without approval. Correct answer. A. Notify the attorney immediately and propose rescheduling one of the dates. Explanation. Paralegals have a duty of diligence and competence under the Model Guidelines for the Utilization of Paralegal Services, ABA. Managing deadlines and court schedules is critical. Immediate communication of conflicts helps avoid missed deadlines, ethical issues, and client dissatisfaction. Question 8. Why is maintaining a dual calendar system, manual and digital, considered best practice in law offices? A. Manual calendars are legally required. B. Digital calendars cannot send reminders. C. It confuses opposing counsel. D. It provides redundancy to avoid missed deadlines due to technical failure or human error. Correct answer. D. It provides redundancy to avoid missed deadlines due to technical failure or human error. Explanation. Calendar and docketing errors are one of the most frequent causes of malpractice claims. Best practices recommend using both a digital and backup system to ensure redundancy. This complies with ABA's diligence standards and helps ensure deadlines are never missed. Question 9. Which of the following entries should be added to a law firm's master litigation calendar? A. Personal birthdays of clients. B. Court filing deadlines, discovery cutoffs, and scheduled hearings. C. Law clerk's class schedules. D. Internal meeting notes only. Correct answer. B. Court filing deadlines, discovery cutoffs, and scheduled hearings. Explanation. A litigation calendar must track all legally significant dates, including statutes of limitations, filing deadlines, discovery cutoffs, and trial dates. According to ABA and NFPA guidelines, Maintaining an accurate and up-to-date calendar is essential to ensure compliance and effective case management. Question 10. How should a paralegal prioritize overlapping deadlines in multiple litigation cases? A. Handle cases with the most paperwork first. B. Prioritize clients who are easiest to reach. C. Review court-mandated deadlines first and communicate potential conflicts to supervising attorneys. D. Choose tasks based on seniority of the assigned attorney. Correct answer. C. Review court-mandated deadlines first and communicate potential conflicts to supervising attorneys. Explanation. Court-imposed deadlines take precedence due to their legal implications. Paralegals must communicate promptly with attorneys regarding any deadline conflicts. Professional responsibility rules require diligence and competence, and failure to prioritize correctly may result in malpractice or court sanctions. Question 11. Which of the following tasks would most likely constitute the unauthorized practice of law by a paralegal? A. Drafting legal documents under attorney instruction. B. Organizing case files for attorney review. C. Conducting factual research for case development. D. Representing a client in court without attorney supervision. Correct answer. D. Representing a client in court without attorney supervision. Explanation. Paralegals are prohibited from engaging in acts that constitute legal representation. According to the ABA Model Guidelines and NFPA rules, appearing in court or giving legal advice without attorney oversight constitutes UPL. Drafting documents is permitted only under attorney direction. Question 12. Which activity is permitted for a paralegal and does not cross into UPL? A. Giving legal advice directly to clients on strategy. B. Interviewing clients and gathering facts under attorney direction. C. Signing legal pleadings as the representative. D. Negotiating settlements independently. Correct answer. B. Interviewing clients and gathering facts under attorney direction. Explanation. Paralegals may perform substantive legal work, including client interviews and research, under direct supervision. However, advising clients or representing them in legal proceedings constitutes UPL. Clear boundaries must be observed under NALA Code Canon 1 and ABA Guidelines. Question 13. Mr. Owens, a senior paralegal, has worked for 15 years in a family law firm. A longtime client calls while the supervising attorney is unavailable and asks Mr. Owens whether she should file for sole custody or joint custody given a new incident. He answers based on past cases. Did Mr. Owens violate professional boundaries? A. Yes, because giving legal advice to clients without attorney input is UPL. B. No, since he has prior experience in similar cases. C. Yes, but only if the client follows the advice. D. No, because custody questions are factual, not legal. Correct answer. A. Yes, because giving legal advice to clients without attorney input is UPL. Explanation. Even experienced paralegals cannot offer legal opinions or strategic advice without attorney oversight. The distinction between procedural assistance and legal judgment is essential. NALA and ABA guidelines require supervision for legal conclusions shared with clients. Question 14. According to the ABA and state bar rules, which of the following would best define UPL? A. Working in a legal office as a secretary. B. Performing legal services for another person when not licensed as an attorney. C. Preparing non-legal business forms. D. Assisting with scheduling depositions. Correct answer. B. Performing legal services for another person when not licensed as an attorney. Explanation. The unauthorized practice of law occurs when a non-lawyer performs services that require legal skill or judgment, including advice, document preparation without review, or courtroom representation. It is prohibited to protect the public from unqualified legal help. Question 15. Why is it unethical for a paralegal to sign pleadings or motions submitted to a court? A. Paralegals forget to date documents. B. It would delay the court process. C. Only licensed attorneys may sign legal pleadings due to court rules and professional accountability. D. It wastes attorney time. Correct answer. C. Only licensed attorneys may sign legal pleadings due to court rules and professional accountability. Explanation. Courts require pleadings to be signed by attorneys responsible for their content. The signature implies legal responsibility and accountability. Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure holds the signer liable for factual and legal accuracy. Question 16. Ms. Patel, a paralegal at an employment law firm, overhears a junior associate instructing a client to tell a softer version of the facts in a discrimination case to avoid hurting their chances in court. Ms. Patel is concerned this borders on unethical behavior. What is the most appropriate action? A. Confront the associate and demand they stop. B. Report the concern to the supervising attorney immediately. C. Ignore it, since it's not her responsibility. D. Call the client privately to warn them. Correct answer. B. Report the concern to the supervising attorney immediately. Explanation. While paralegals are not ethically responsible for supervising attorneys, they have a duty to report potential ethical violations to their supervisor. ABA Model Rule 5.3 requires reporting of known misconduct, especially where it may compromise court integrity. Question 17. Under federal anti-discrimination law, which of the following would most likely constitute unlawful workplace harassment? A. A single offhand remark not repeated. B. Constructive feedback on job performance. C. Disagreement about work policies. D. Persistent derogatory jokes about an employee's national origin that create a hostile work environment. Correct answer. D. Persistent derogatory jokes about an employee's national origin that create a hostile work environment. Explanation. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act prohibits conduct that creates a hostile or offensive work environment based on protected categories such as race, gender, and national origin. The behavior must be severe or pervasive, and jokes or comments can meet that standard if repeated and offensive. Question 18. What is the legal standard used to determine whether conduct constitutes sexual harassment? A. Whether the employer has a written policy. B. Whether the victim reported it within 24 hours. C. Whether a reasonable person would find the behavior offensive or unwelcome. D. Whether the behavior occurred in front of HR. Correct answer. C. Whether a reasonable person would find the behavior offensive or unwelcome. Explanation. The reasonable person standard evaluates how a typical employee would perceive the conduct. This objective test, supported by case law such as Meritor Savings Bank v. Vinson, helps courts determine whether harassment occurred, regardless of the perpetrator's intent. Question 19. Ms. Torres, a paralegal, learns that her colleague has been receiving unwanted romantic messages from their direct supervisor. The colleague is afraid of losing her job if she speaks out. Ms. Torres is unsure whether it is her place to intervene. What should Ms. Torres do? A. Encourage her colleague to report the harassment and offer to support the complaint process. B. Tell the supervisor to stop directly. C. Send anonymous complaints to HR. D. Do nothing, as it's not her concern. Correct answer. A. Encourage her colleague to report the harassment and offer to support the complaint process. Explanation. Sexual harassment reporting often requires support due to fear of retaliation. While Ms. Torres cannot file on behalf of her colleague, she should encourage internal reporting channels and may consult with HR. Title VII prohibits retaliation for reporting. Question 20. Which of the following is protected under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act? A. Marital status and credit score. B. Religion, race, sex, national origin, and color. C. Political affiliation and geographic location. D. Personality traits and social media preferences. Correct answer: B. Religion, race, sex, national origin, and color. Explanation: Title VII protects against employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy and sexual orientation, and national origin. Other categories may be protected under state laws, but Title VII's scope is federally limited to these core groups. Question 21. Which of the following best explains the reasonable person standard in negligence law? A. It is based on the defendant's personal knowledge and skills. B. It excuses liability if the defendant meant well. C. It applies only in medical malpractice cases. D. It is an objective test that evaluates how a hypothetical average person would have acted in similar circumstances. Correct answer: D. It is an objective test that evaluates how a hypothetical average person would have acted in similar circumstances. Explanation: Negligence is measured by how a reasonable person would act under similar circumstances. This objective standard disregards the defendant's intent or personal shortcomings. It is a core principle in tort law, guiding whether a breach of duty has occurred. Question 22. Which of the following must a plaintiff prove to establish a successful negligence claim? A. Mens rea and actus reus. B. Res ipsa loquitur and intent. C. Duty, breach, causation, and damages. D. Motive and malice. Correct answer: C. Duty, breach, causation, and damages. Explanation: To prove negligence, a plaintiff must show that the defendant owed a legal duty of care, breached that duty, caused harm both in fact and proximately, and that the plaintiff suffered actual damages. Without all four elements, the claim typically fails. Question 23. Mr. Delgado owns a grocery store. One rainy day, a customer slips on a puddle inside the store and suffers a concussion. There were no wet floor signs, and employees had not cleaned in over an hour. Security footage shows other customers avoiding the puddle. Which element of negligence is most clearly established here? A. Breach of duty due to failure to maintain safe premises. B. Absence of motive. C. No damages occurred. D. Contributory negligence by the customer. Correct answer: A. Breach of duty due to failure to maintain safe premises. Explanation: Store owners owe a duty to maintain reasonably safe conditions for patrons. By failing to warn of or clean up a known hazard, Mr. Delgado likely breached that duty. The plaintiff may still need to prove causation and damages to prevail fully. Question 24. How is proximate cause different from but-for causation in negligence? A. They are legally identical. B. Proximate cause limits liability to foreseeable harms, while but-for causation is a factual test of cause. C. But-for causation always results in liability. D. Proximate cause includes all consequences regardless of foreseeability. Correct answer: B. Proximate cause limits liability to foreseeable harms, while but-for causation is a factual test of cause. Explanation: But-for causation means the injury would not have occurred without the defendant's actions. Proximate cause goes further to ask whether the injury was a foreseeable result of the conduct. This limits liability for extreme, unforeseeable consequences. Palsgraf v. Long Island Railroad Co. Question 25. Which of the following is the strongest defense to a negligence claim? A. The defendant had good intentions. B. The plaintiff was angry. C. There were no eyewitnesses. D. The plaintiff knowingly and voluntarily assumed the risk involved. Correct answer: D. The plaintiff knowingly and voluntarily assumed the risk involved. Explanation: assumption of risk is a recognized defense in negligence law. If a plaintiff knowingly enters a dangerous situation and is injured, they may be barred from recovery. This defense is often seen in sports injuries or clearly hazardous activities. Question 26. Ms. Thompson was texting while driving and rear-ended another car at a stoplight. The driver she hit had faulty brake lights. The injured driver sues Ms. Thompson for negligence. Which legal principle is most likely to apply? A. Strict liability. B. Assumption of risk. C. Comparative negligence, reducing damages based on shared fault. D. No-fault immunity. Correct answer: C. Comparative negligence, reducing damages based on shared fault. Explanation: in jurisdictions that follow comparative negligence, both parties' actions are weighed. Ms. Thompson was negligent in texting, but the other driver's brake lights may have contributed to the accident. Damages would be reduced proportionally to each party's fault. Question 27. Which of the following best defines duty of care in negligence? A. A personal moral obligation to be polite. B. A legal obligation to avoid acts or omissions that could foreseeably harm others. C. A right owed by others. D. A contract-based agreement. Correct answer: B. A legal obligation to avoid acts or omissions that could foreseeably harm others. Explanation: duty of care is a cornerstone of negligence. It arises when a relationship between parties creates an expectation of care, such as between drivers and other road users. Breaching that duty creates liability when harm results. Question 28. Which of the following best describes the primary legal distinction between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust? A. A revocable trust cannot hold real estate assets. B. An irrevocable trust terminates automatically upon the death of the grantor. C. A revocable trust does not require a trustee. D. A revocable trust can be altered or revoked by the grantor during their lifetime, while an irrevocable trust cannot be modified once created. Correct answer: D. A revocable trust can be altered or revoked by the grantor during their lifetime, while an irrevocable trust cannot be modified once created. Explanation: revocable trusts allow the grantor to retain control and modify or terminate the trust at any time. In contrast, irrevocable trusts, once executed, typically remove the grantor's legal control over the assets. This has significant implications for estate planning, taxation, and asset protection. The flexibility of revocable trusts is balanced by irrevocable trusts, advantages in minimizing estate taxes and shielding assets from creditors. Question 29. Mr. Glenn establishes a living trust and names his daughter as the trustee. The trust provides monthly disbursements to his nephew, who struggles with managing finances. After Mr. Glenn's death, his daughter begins denying payments and claims the nephew is using the funds irresponsibly. Assuming no discretionary clause exists in the trust document, what is the nephew's legal standing? A. He has a legal right to enforce the trust terms in court, since he is a named beneficiary. B. He can be removed from the trust at the trustee's will. C. He must submit to the trustee's discretion without recourse. D. He must first obtain probate court approval before challenging the trustee. Correct answer: A. He has a legal right to enforce the trust terms in court since he is a named beneficiary. Explanation: A trust beneficiary has legal standing to enforce the provisions of the trust. Under Common Trust Law Restatement 3rd of Trusts and Uniform Trust Code, trustees owe a fiduciary duty to beneficiaries, which includes adhering to the terms of the trust. Unless the trust grants discretionary power to the trustee cannot unilaterally withhold distributions. Courts can intervene if the trustee breaches fiduciary duties. Question 30. Which of the following statements best explains the role of a trustee in fiduciary duty? A. A trustee can use trust funds as long as they repay it later. B. A trustee must act solely in the interest of the beneficiaries and follow the terms of the trust document with prudence and loyalty. C. A trustee may delegate all duties without oversight. D. A trustee is only accountable to the grantor, not to the beneficiaries. Correct answer. B. A trustee must act solely in the interest of the beneficiaries and follow the terms of the trust document with prudence and loyalty. Explanation. A trustee is a fiduciary and must act with utmost loyalty and care. This includes investing assets prudently, avoiding self-dealing, and adhering strictly to the terms of the trust. The Uniform Trust Code, UTC, and common law impose fiduciary duties of care, loyalty, and impartiality. Violations can result in legal liability and removal as trustee.